Welcome into episode 432 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget and Scott, you guys were at Media Day or Breakup Day, media availabilities yesterday for the Boston Bruins. Lots of takeaways there, I imagine. There's also the official conclusion of the NHL season. So there's the playoff field is set. If we have any thoughts on the NHL playoffs as we get into the episode, but of course, we're a Boston Bruins podcast, so we're going to start mainly discussing everything surrounding them. So let's get into the opening shifts, Bridget and Scott.
Yeah, I'll go first. So just so people know, Breakup Day is players, and we also got to talk to Joe Sacco. The press conference with Charlie Jacobs, Cam Neely, and Don Sweeney is coming next week. That will be on Wednesday at the Garden. So obviously we'll have reactions to that as well. But I think one of the big takeaways from Breakup Day has to do with team leadership. And we got to talk to, obviously, David Pastrnak, who we've talked to a lot down the stretch, as well as Charlie McAvoy, who we've only been able to talk to a couple times down the stretch, because obviously he was injured and missed everything from Four Nations on because of the shoulder injury and the infection that he suffered. So it was interesting because I remember really both McAvoy and Pastrnak have said at various points down the stretch that they really haven't had time to start planning for the future and thinking about how they want to mold the team because Pasternak's still playing games. He's just going day to day trying to get through all this. And McAvoy's rehabbing and not even around the team every day. So they did both address it a little on Thursday. And McAvoy said of that process of kind of, molding the team how they want, that starts very quickly after this. Getting together and establishing what we want, what our pillars are going to look like, what we want the culture to get back to, and how we're going to do it. And then he kind of paused and he says, what an opportunity, right? What an exciting challenge that's going to be for us, not just us, but a few other guys. And he said, we're going to take it head on. Pastrnak was asked about whether he wants the C, which obviously has been, kind of a popular debate since the end of the season. I know we talked about it on Sunday Skate and in a little bit on here.
Yeah, it's been a popular debate since Marchand got traded.
Yeah, it really has. And Pastrnak said, the leaders I had around me, meaning throughout his career, it was never about who wears the C or who wears the A. Everybody in the room is equal here, and we need to make sure that's one of the things that we have to find. A group, a core again that's willing to put the work in. It's not about one guy, it's going to be multiple of us. McAvoy also was just like over the top effusive in his praise of Pastrnak and how he handled everything after the trade deadline. He called him the best player in the NHL down the stretch and said, he stepped up vocally more than he usually does. He said he did everything he could have possibly done to help this team, and he did it, and it was a joy to watch every night. So certainly not that we would expect there to be, but clearly like no signs of any friction or tension there regarding like who's going to get the C. And by the way, it's a possibility that it might be neither. Like they might go into the year with 3 assistant captains, 3 A's. I don't think that's what they do. I do think they'll pick a C probably closer to the season, sometime during training camp. But for now, those two are on the same page. And then we also, I think what the rest of the leadership group looks like is coming into focus a bit. They said they're all going to get together this summer, and it's a group that also includes Hampus Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov. It seems like Elias Lindholm's in there. I think whether he's part of that meeting or not, I think Morgan Geekie is pushing. Joe Sacco had highlighted Zadorov and Elias Lindholm as 2 guys who stepped up down the stretch as leaders, in different ways. Obviously, Zadorov's more vocal, but I did think it was an interesting day just to kind of get the feel of like what this next leadership group in that room is going to look like.
Yeah, definitely. My opening shift has to do with some injury updates because some of them were, you kind of suspected. There was at least one injury that I think nobody really knew about. So I'll start there. Pavel Zacha mentioned to the media, just very first question off the top, how's your health? And he said he has to stay in Boston for a little while extra to get treatment because he's dealing with some lower body injuries, and he singled out his knee as kind of the main problem. And he was asked, has this been throughout the season, or like when did this happen? He said it was kind of there throughout the season, but it was at its worst the last 2 months of the season. So he was dealing with something we didn't know about. Obviously,
The only sign, like, this is the kind of thing you don't really think of it until after, but the only sign was he did take a maintenance day at some point in the last couple of weeks, which, usually tells you at least something's going on, but we didn't know what.
Yeah. So he said, though, good news, does not require surgery. So it shouldn't affect his off season. I'm not sure what the treatment is that he's getting, but to hear that it's not surgery means it's not as, it's a minor injury rather than something major. And so that's good news for him. McAvoy and Lindholm spoke to. Lindholm gave us, kind of
which
Hampus, Hampus Lindholm. Sorry, both Lindholms did talk about injury, so we'll get to the other one too. Hampus Lindholm talked about his knee injury and the second surgery that he had as well, and what the recovery process was like and the setbacks that he had. And he said basically because he was actually kind of ahead of schedule at one point, and the knee wasn't fractured so much that he said the assessment originally was that he wasn't going to have any issue with the recovery long term. It's because his knee stayed pretty much intact. But they put, I think, like a plate in his knee as well to stabilize it. Turns out that was irritating him, so he had to have part of that removed. And that's when he got shut down. And so now the timeline for him and where he's at in the second round of rehab, I guess you could say, he said he's lifting, full body weight lifting, but he's not cleared to skate until mid-May. So he'll start skating in mid-May when he's at home in Sweden, he said. So that's Lindholm. It doesn't sound like he will miss any time in training camp and preseason, and he should start the season on time if all goes as planned with the rehab that he's currently undergoing. Were you in with McAvoy? Did he give any update on himself? Because he was close at the end of the season, and then it just turned out the timeline wasn't quite in line. But what did he say about that?
He said he's getting close to being cleared for like full hockey activity. He said if the Bruins had made the playoffs, there would have been a debate about if or when he could have returned. So McAvoy is not that far off. And he'll be cleared way ahead of training camp.
Mark Kastelik also said he wasn't that far off. He said, I was about ready to come back, but ran out of games. So his was a concussion, which we kind of knew already. I don't think anyone had, I don't think it was ever completely said, but we saw the hit that he took. And then you could tell that every time there was another big contact, it seemed to affect him. And then he ends up having to leave that West Coast trip, come home, and didn't play again after that. So he missed a lot of time at the end of the year. And what he was talking about was how he didn't feel like himself. And I asked him, what did he mean by that? And he said he had a lot of head pressure, a little bit of fog, like just didn't feel like his self, like in terms of his personality, 100%. And the concussions can do that. They can have mood effects. They can have physical effects. He said he was having headaches. So he wasn't feeling, when you hear someone say, I didn't feel like myself, like that's not good. Like that to me is, I feel really bad in that case, because you never know 100% what that means. But he said that was the worst concussion he's had. He has had them before in lower levels, but this one was the most severe. And so he was, basically his dilemma was, I'm the kind of guy who just goes and plays one way, and I have no ability to pull myself back. And even to agree to not be in the lineup was something that went against his nature. And he was asked, is this going to change how you play at all? And he said, no, once this is behind me, it's going to be behind me. Like he's going to go back and play the same kind of style that he always has, where he's super physical, fighting. Someone asked him, like, why did you fight? Right. Like when you knew you had a concussion, like he immediately went and had a fight. And he was like, I can't turn off the switch. His father was the same way. So yeah, I guess maybe it runs in the family, but he was about to get cleared, so I don't think it's going to affect him next season. But concussions are obviously easily re-aggravated once you have some and once you have a bad one. So this particular concussion symptoms are almost gone, but there's always that scary possibility of a re-injury, an easy re-injury with concussions.
Yeah, he said he also talked to Patrice Bergeron about just getting through it and continuing to have a long career, which obviously Bergeron did. When he was younger, at one point his career was very much in jeopardy because of concussions. And, fortunately he got through it and really played like 13 more years like after those concussion scares. And I maybe had a minor one somewhere in there, but like for the most part was able to just stay healthy.
Sounded to me like whatever conversation he did have with Bergeron put him at ease that he was going to be able to go back to doing what he normally does. But obviously Bergeron is not the same kind of player as Mark Kastelik.
No, not much of a fighter.
No, and not every single shift finishing your check, and like he was there couldn't really be more different, honestly. And then, unless I'm forgetting one, I'll finish off with what Elias Lindholm said about his injury. So we all know that he missed time in training camp because we didn't know what the injury was, or even if it was something that was not health related. But he said that he had a back injury that he suffered in the preseason and in training camp. And
I think he actually suffered it before that. He said he suffered it in August, and then it like flared up again the first day of training camp.
Was that not? When did training camp start? I don't know. My brain's still that summer seems so
training
far.
Training camp's usually September.
Okay, so he was dealing with that. He did start training camp and then really felt it in the back, and so that set him back. And then when I asked him, I was like, well, did you feel healthy throughout the season? And he just kind of like literally laughed at me and he was like, everybody's banged up. So I don't know if he was playing through some pain with the back injury or with just, wear and tear from the season of, just of playing hockey throughout the year. Maybe that explains some of the stretches where he didn't look like a number one center and where he, fell short of production. I don't know how much you guys think that played in, but obviously back injuries are serious. Like those, you that controls your whole motion. Like your back is super important to just your range of motion and your movement. So yeah, guys, what do you think about what his comments were for his injury?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense as to why it contributed to a slow start for him. I think the whole season was a perfect storm of negative occurrences for this team. I think Lindholm is probably a microcosm of that. I don't think it explains away everything, but I just think the combination, because he was asked about the pressures of his contract and if that was weighing on him to produce, and he said, well, he cited the back injury first and foremost as something that was probably bothering him the most. You get off to a slow start. Boston's used to success. The team isn't having success. You're a key acquisition over the summer. You feel like you're a reason for the failures. Now you're blaming yourself for a lot of things. So yeah, like I just think that physically and mentally, on and off the ice, just about anything that could have gone wrong for this Bruins team went wrong. And that includes the other injuries you were talking about, Bridget, like Hampus Lindholm. By the time Hampus Lindholm hits the ice at the start of next season, it'll be almost a full calendar year since he played NHL hockey. So I know how bad this season was for the Bruins, but people have to remember that you're without your second best defenseman for 90% of the season. McAvoy's out pretty much the whole second half. And while they struggled out of the gate with both those guys also in the lineup, I think the Bruins' problems this year were so much more than any one individual player, which is a perfect storm. So to answer your question about Lindholm's injury, Bridget, Elias Lindholm's injury, I do think it obviously what he said is true, but at the same time, it going forward, it's now a moot point. Like I don't think he was trying to use it as an excuse. I think he was just trying to be transparent and honest.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he's not the kind of guy that does the whole excuse thing. He's one of the hardest players on himself that we've encountered. So I would say that if anyone's listening to this and thinks that's what he was doing, he wasn't. As it's actually, him being transparent is good. I mean, it helps explain certain things that we didn't know.
Well, and it also it sets him up for people to expect a bounce back season, because if he's saying, like, which he did, he said he felt like he was chasing it all year. He said he didn't feel like himself until the last month or two. Now, I don't know if that meant he didn't feel like himself in terms of his game and how he was playing, or like physically he didn't feel like himself. Like, did it linger that long where even in January he was having back issues? Like, that wasn't entirely clear. But either way, like, what it does now is it sets up the obvious sort of conclusion moving forward, which is, okay, back's healed, have a healthy summer, get to training camp healthy, have a full camp. Like, now you're settled into the city, you're settled into the new team, and it's like, okay, then it's fair, as we should. It's fair for us to expect a better season next year. And I think he will tell you the same thing. Like, I'm sure he expects a much better season next year.
And as far as a sense of belonging, there when you come into a room last year, again, as a key free agent acquisition, it's not the team around you can be as welcoming as possible, but you still know that you're new to the situation. If Marchand and Coyle and Carlo were here next season, he would feel more comfortable because it's his second year. But the fact that those guys are gone, it opens up that opportunity to really cement your place in that room as a leader now. So now he's probably going into next year less feeling like, okay, now I feel more comfortable. And he's probably feeling not just more comfortable, but like, I need to be a strong leader in this room. Like, this room needs me. And yeah, I think so. All of these things combined, to Scott's point, sets him up for what should be a better season.
Yeah. And if people are having a hard time following our explanations of this, I'll just plug that Scott and I combined for a 8 takeaways article from Breakup Day. So there's quotes from some of the guys about their injuries. If you want to read word for word what they said to us, it is there. And Scott also posted some of them, like the videos of them saying it, to our Twitter as well. So if you're curious on any of those, you can probably find it on one of our Twitters.
Yeah, I think we tweeted them all from the podcast account.
From the podcast account as well. Yep. So that should all be there. And we'll get back to some of the takeaways from Breakup Day because we didn't hit all of them. One of the takeaways was about Swayman, which we will get to later. We are 18 minutes in, and Brian hasn't got to his opening shift yet. So, Brian, take it away.
Well, but just before I do, I wanted to clarify a few things on your guys' opening shifts. So, Bridget, forgive me if you did. Did you happen to mention the Zacha? Zacha mentioned his knee injury that was bothering him most of the year, and then you did mention that?
Yep.
Okay, good. And then Scott, the McAvoy timetable on his injury, potentially for a little bit more detective work here. When exactly is World Championships? Because he did mention that he wasn't cleared for that. If he was asked if he was going to participate, he said, "No, I can't. I'm not cleared."
He said he's not going, no matter what. He's not cleared yet, and even if he is cleared in like the next week or two before they start, he's not going.
Yeah, he had some, and we can get to this later too. He had some pretty emotional things to say about his experience at Four Nations and whether or not it was worth it. So That was another takeaway for sure coming out of there. But go ahead, Brian.
Okay, so yeah, we've been speculating the last couple of episodes about where the Bruins would finish the season in the standings. And of course, we got our answer last night. The Flyers lost in regulation to the Sabres. So Boston finishes 28th in the NHL. They now have the 5th best odds of winning the NHL draft lottery. So for those listening, for those watching, just bear with me here. And
here, Brian, I'm gonna throw it up on the screen as well. It has the wrong logos, but you can still follow along like with where the 5th one is.
Right. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So this is from before last night's event. So just flip flop the Bruins and Flyers logos. But the Bruins can finish as high as 1st. They can finish as low as 7th when you finish 28th in the league. So here are the odds, draft position by draft position, and then I'm going to kind of step back and give some further color. So the Bruins have an 8.5% chance of drafting 1st overall. They have an 8.6% chance of drafting 2nd, a 0.3% chance of drafting 3rd. They have no chance of drafting 4th, 24.5% chance of drafting 5th, 44% chance of drafting 6th, and a 14.2% chance of drafting 7th. They can't draft any lower. So, Bridget, if you want, you can probably take that off. Now, those are the specific odds per draft position. Let's take a step back and kind of lump some together. So basically, there's a 17.1% chance that the Bruins draft either 1st or 2nd. Okay. There's a 68.5% chance that they draft 5th or 6th. There's a 14.2% chance they draft 7th, like we said. Let's take it even a step further back. The Bruins enter the draft lottery with the 5th best odds of winning the 1st overall pick. So the percentage of the Bruins maintaining a top 5 pick is 41.9%. The percentage of them drafting 6th or 7th outside the top 5 is 58.2%.
Which is crazy.
It is. And what's even crazier is when you look at that 41.9% chance of maintaining a top 5 draft pick, there's a 0.3% chance they draft 3rd and a 0% chance that they draft 4th. So 3rd and 4th are essentially not even a thing. So it's that 41.9% chance is made up of 1st, 2nd, or 5th when you really think about it.
That's weird.
Yeah, and like that's if you think like top 5 is a meaningful distinction, like that's the biggest thing that changed last night. Like if you just want to boil it down, because the team that has the 4th worst record has a 79% chance of picking in the top 5. And now, as you said, the Bruins are down to a 41% chance of picking in the top 5. So I'm not sure. At one point, not too long ago, I did think that was a meaningful distinction. And as I said in the last pod, like some of the tiers in terms of the top, call it players 3 through 8 or so, seems to be blurring, where that might just be one big tier, depending on which analyst you read, which scouting report you're on, or prospect ranking or whatever. So I'm not just saying this like because the Bruins are now in this position, but push comes to shove, I'm not sure it's the biggest deal whether they're picking 5th or 6th or 6th or 7th. Like there's going to be a good prospect. There's going to be a good center prospect available to them no matter what. So yeah, in my mind, like I absolutely would still rather have a better shot at, say, Frundell or Hagens than Roger McQueen or Jake O'Brien. Like I still think there's a distinction there, but as I mentioned on the last podcast, like Central Scouting just put out rankings that had Jake O'Brien 4th among North American skaters. I think ahead of Denwyer. And Elite Prospects put out an April update that had Roger McQueen 5th ahead of Denwyer and Anton Frundell. So, like depending on who you're reading or kind of what conclusion you come to, that might not be the end of the world if you miss out on the second or third center and you have to take the fourth or fifth. Like,
it's just weird to me that, and I know this is just how, whatever, isn't it an accounting firm that comes up with like the odds for everything, or it's some weird partnership that they have that
EY.
that created the odds of, the percentages of whatever. But like, isn't it just weird that if you finish fifth, you have almost a 0% chance of drafting third or fourth, but you have
no, because the lottery is only for the top 2 spots. So.
I know it, but when you look at it, it's like, okay, it all feels like it should be, movable. I don't know. It's a weird situation.
Bridget, you're completely justified in asking that, because I know people have asked, they've brought that up to me online, like, what if they have the fourth or fifth best odds, then why is it that they have such little odds of even drafting that? And the short answer basically is that you have it's a combination of everybody else behind the top 2, or everybody else behind the 32nd and 31st placed teams that have a chance of drafting first or second. All their probabilities add up, and there's so many different ways that you just get pushed down. So it's just the system that they have in place. And I believe they changed the lottery system maybe 5-6 drafts ago, something like that. I don't know.
2022 was the most recent update.
Okay, so I'm not sure what it was before then. I'm not sure what it was 10, 15 years ago when the Bruins were staying in second over. I don't know exactly what it has been historically, but where it was, maybe it used to be more where you finish is where you pick back in the day. I'm not sure, but right now, to Scott's point, the lottery is not deciding anything outside of who picks first and second, and then everybody else slides down. So it's just an accumulation of everybody else's odds and probabilities, and that's why these percentages look so funky and kind of random.
Yeah, and the zero. I wish the NHL had all this on their site, and I don't know why they don't. But like the 0.3% chance of picking third, I found somewhere else that said it's 0%. Like they can't pick third. So I think there's got to be like some sort of hang up on Tankathon has like one possibility of it happening, and other like people I've talked to are like, no, they can't get to third. And I'm like, so is that are people saying that like definitively there's a 0% chance of them getting to third, or like is there actually that 0.3%? I haven't gotten clarification, and it's not on the NHL website, which is just extremely convenient to not transparently explain things to people. But
that way, if someone happens to end up third that they're not supposed to be, it's like, it was a 0.3% chance, guys. It was always a chance.
So, Scott, when you mention you're not as concerned about the difference between the fourth and fifth best odds, you don't think it's that big of a deal. It's interesting because part of me, if the Bruins in this lottery end up picking 7th, which is the worst they can pick, I know it's going to be unfair, but my brain is just going to go back to looking at that scoreboard in game 82 for the Bruins where they were down 4-2 late in the second. But in all seriousness, it's when thinking about the difference between fourth and fifth, it really is coming from a bit of a place of greed, because at the trade deadline, the Bruins would have been picking 10th, or they would have been 10th in the lottery odds. So, the fact that they even, like, if you were to tell us then that come season's end that they'd have the 5th best odds of drafting first overall and a 41% chance of drafting in the top 5, we would have been, oh, F and A, let's take that. Because I remember there were a lot of times this year back in like January and February where I would say, guys, I don't think this team is bound for the playoffs, and it might be good to try to get a top 10 pick or trade into the top 10. Remember I said, if they finish 12th or 13th, can they trade into the top 10? So here we are today on April 18th talking about a 100% chance of drafting in the top 7 and a 41% chance of drafting in the top 5. and a
Hey,
17.1% chance of drafting in the top 2. So
yeah, I mean, if you want to be optimistic, just think about that 17% right there. But also, when we were having the conversation about maybe trading into the top 10, who are we talking about, Brian? Remember, Tank for Hagens was
yeah,
an episode or something, and it was like you might actually be able to get Hagens where you're drafting if that's who you really want. And he might be left. Like you could legitimately get Hagens, which if well, this had to have been months ago now. we had said like, oh, there was no legitimate chance it felt like at that point because he was, the number one. He was considered to be the number one guy. He was going to go number one overall, and now he's fallen probably to that range where the Bruins will be picking.
yeah, his stock was high at World Juniors for sure. Then it kind of went down a little bit as the season went along for BC.
Which is so funny because I feel like yeah, clearly there's been this slide, and I feel like some people are taking to the extreme where they're like, don't draft Hagens at all, and like people have him like going outside the top 6 or 7, and it's like, go rewatch some World Juniors. Like, he was dominant on a team that won gold, and he was an underage player on the team. Like, he was setting records in the development program, and like has now in multiple international tournaments. I think he set the points record at the under 18 World Championships last year. But like because he was only a point per game at BC instead of a point and a half, all of a sudden like he's going to be a bust and everyone should steer clear of him. And I'm like, yeah, no, I can't do it, guys. Like I would still, if the Bruins pick 5th and James Hagens is on the board, like run to the podium with a smile on your face.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. Well, they're in a decent position to get somebody that seemed unattainable, and maybe some people are still just as high as they were before and think he's maybe the best center prospect in the draft still. And Don Sweeney, we know, has seen him a lot because proximity and going to the BC games around here. So, and Scott,
I saw a ranking the other day, and I think it was on Twitter. I think it's handled like Western Hockey Scout, but he's someone who has a lot of really good insights that I found to be a valuable follow. And I think I hope it was him, otherwise I'm giving credit to the wrong person. But like he put out his final ranking or April update, and was very interesting because he had 1 Michael Misa, 2 Hagens, 3 Schaefer. Had Schaefer down at 3. So like there's again, and just to the idea of like there's gonna be so many different rankings and people see these players differently. Like I'm seeing more rankings now that have Misa number 1, which was like all along we've been saying Schaefer consensus number 1. Everyone has him number 1. Everyone has him number 1. And now all of a sudden, like there's this, not that it's a ton, but like this push from at least a few that I've seen where it's like, no, Misa number 1.
And a few months ago, Hagens was pretty much consensus number 1.
Yeah, I see. See, to me, it just comes down to who wins that first overall pick. If San Jose wins the draft lottery, then I think Schaefer is going 1, because I think San Jose is looking at their young core of franchise forwards and saying, now we need a franchise D. But if it's Boston, for example, I really think Boston would probably heavily lean towards taking Misa. And if Boston drafts 2nd, then there's a good chance Misa is still there if someone takes Schaefer. I mean, it just depends on team needs, which is why when I look at on Tankathon, I look at the mock draft, right? They have Schaefer going 1, Misa 2nd, Porter Martone 3rd, Hagens 4th, Frondell 5th, Denoyer 6th, Victor Eklund 7th. It's funny because what this Tankathon doesn't take into account is team need. And I know that drafting, you want to take the best player available. But I look at these teams drafting, and a lot of these teams need a center. And I just don't like, for example, I wouldn't be surprised if Victor Eklund falls, or I wouldn't be surprised if Porter Martone is available around 6 instead of being taken at 3rd.
Does someone fall in love with another defenseman? Like most rankings have Jackson Smith and Radim Murtka more in like the 9 to 12 range. But again, I saw one the other day that had Radim Murtka 5. He's a 6'6", good skating right shot defenseman. Not a ton of offense, but like viewed as a shutdown guy who's going to have some mobility. And it's like, all it takes is one team to be like, yeah, we want that. Like, that's the player we want. And all of a sudden he goes 5th, and you're like, oh, wow, that, a couple of these guys I didn't expect to fall are still there at 6 or 7.
Exactly. So there's just so many unknowns. There's so much unpredictability. But what we can predict is that because the Bruins can draft no lower than 7th, to your point earlier, Scott, they're going to end up with a damn good prospect and a player that will be a good fixture for them in the future, even if it ends up being that they're a really good second liner. Contending teams need really good second liners. So hopefully the ceiling is higher than that, but we'll find out. But again, I just want to reiterate, if we go back to the Bruins draft odds back at trade deadline day, they would have had a 3.5% chance of picking first, a 3.7% chance of picking second, and a 0.1% chance of picking third. And that would have been it. They would have had a very slim chance of picking the top 3, and then it would be 10th or later. So the fact that the Bruins have climbed to the position that they are, yeah, on the one hand, we could choose to be annoyed that you could have gotten the 4th best odds, but if you take a step back and think of where this team was a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I think we would all very much take where they are right now. So
yeah, like I had people tweet at me like after I tweeted that they finished 5th worst because the Flyers lost. A couple tweets of like people who were like they can't even tank right, and I was like, on the contrary, they did a damn good job of tanking after the trade deadline. Like sold away 4 legit NHLers. Rolled out a roster that features career AHLers and kids getting called up, making their debuts who probably aren't really ready and wouldn't be here if they had a better roster. They lost 10 games in a row at one point. They had the 2nd worst record in the NHL after the trade deadline. Only the Sharks were worse. Like, I don't know, guys. It sounds like a pretty good tank to me.
Well, and also
like a franchise record for like losses in a row or whatever.
They finished 1 shy. Yeah.
1 shy, yeah.
And also the night the Bruins are playing the Devils, I wasn't able to watch the game live, so I was updating my phone to see what the score was, and I saw that the Devils were up 4-2, and again, I'm not trying to be an asshole, and I expect the players to be working hard and the coaches to be coaching hard, but in that moment I was like, okay, I wouldn't hate if this result holds up. And then I looked at my phone a little bit later and I saw that it was 4-4, and I'm like, oh my God, what was it? Pastrnak to Geeky a few more times. And then I look at my phone. Oh no, it's John Farinacci. And then it's Fabian Lysell hunting down Brendan Dillon and feeding Kuzi in front. I'm like, okay, well, I can't. What am I? Okay, so Farinacci and then Lysell and Kuznetsov make it 4-4. You can't sit here and say play the kids down the stretch and then be like, oh, the damn kids. Like, if John Farinacci is going to make it 4-3, then John Farinacci is going to make it 4-3. That's not what are you supposed to do about that situation. So I wasn't even. I kind of chuckled because it was just kind of funny the way it played out.
Well, and I don't know if you guys watched that Flyers Sabres game. I have things wrong in my head, so I actually did watch that game. But the Flyers are going like all out in the 3rd period, and you know why? Because they're trying to get Matvei Michkov his first career hat trick. He had 2 goals. And so they are setting him up left and right. They're like double shifting him. And he has a bunch of scoring chances while they're down by a goal. And then they pull the goalie like to actually try to tie it. They give him an empty netter. And then they send Michkov back over the boards down 5-3 with like a minute left. And Michkov doesn't score, but the Flyers do with like 15 seconds left. So then he's on for one final shift, and they're like throwing it on net from outside the blue line and like crashing the net. And it's like they're trying to ruin their draft stock. Like they're going all out trying to get Michkov a goal. And obviously they came up short at the end. But like it was funny because like even the announcers were like, well, if you're sitting at home, like just hoping that they lose and get the 4th worst record, he's like, they're really trying to get Michkov that 3rd goal.
Right, and I saw the Flyers Twitter were tweeting out when they would score, and of course the comments are can you guys stop scoring, please? Can you guys lose, please? So Bruins fans, Flyers fans, hockey fans, they all think alike because fans ultimately they have a tendency to look at the bigger picture, and that's within their right as fans. I'm never gonna look at a fan and say, yeah, no, you shouldn't want your team to get the highest draft odds as possible by losing game 82 in a meaningless situation from a fan's perspective. But of course, the individuals between the boards, they don't have a fan's perspective, and that's the beauty of sports. You have the people that are in the business, that are in the industry, the players, the coaches, the management, broadcasters, and they get the fans that they get to be fans. Fans get to be fans, and players get to be players. It's what makes moments like this kind of fun to talk about, because you have everybody wants the same thing, which is a Stanley Cup, but big picture. But sometimes the small pictures, there's a little bit of disagreement, I should say. But it all makes for some fun conversation and moments.
I think we should get to our other. This wasn't even an opening shift, but we did come up with a game.
Well, do we want to set it up? Because none of us took Jeremy Swayman as our opening shift, but obviously what he had to say Thursday has generated some reaction and some controversy, certainly on sports radio airwaves. But I've seen reaction from some fans online of like, again, it's. I said this on Jones and Keefe when I was on with them this week. It was like, at some point, like, I get why people don't like the things Jeremy Swayman says and how he always is looking for positives and silver linings and all that. But yeah, like, you still got some of that yesterday where he's talking about how good his body feels and how that's a positive. And, he's happy that he was able to hold up and play as many games as he did. And like, there were moments in there where he said he took accountability, and he did say in some of his answers, like, I need to play better. I know I can play better. He talked about how he wants to work on parts of his game that he knows he has to improve. So like, that was all in there too, but so were the positives. And then there was talk about spirituality and being in touch with nature. And
can I take it from here?
Yeah, go for it, Bridget.
Okay, I asked the question, so I wasn't necessarily expecting the answer, but I stuck around in the scrum just because I wanted to ask him about his his perspective, and why after every game is he seemingly like the one guy who is just always like talking about the positives. And I just wanted to give him a chance to say, like, that's just who I am, like that. And if you listen to the full thing with the question, I say, like, is this just who you've always been? Does it help you, like, put things behind you? That was kind of the setup, because fans had been critical of him trying to find positives, and even some of his teammates kind of seemed like they weren't happy with it. Specifically looking back to the Zadorov little conversation, but I thought, could take the opportunity to say, like, oh, that's just kind of like, that's just how I am. And he, to his credit, if you listen to the whole answer, you do get a different feel than what the part that talk radio has run with and maybe Twitter has run with. Because his full answer was about having gratitude, knowing that you have this opportunity to play hockey that not everybody gets, and that part of it was a good answer. Towards the end is when he started kind of going a little bit rogue for what I would have thought he was saying.
Don't read the exact quote just yet.
You know what? I'm not going to read the exact quote. We're going to get there. So this prompted a conversation pre-recording.
Well, so after breakup day yesterday, so it's a long day. We did get pizza. Thank you to the Bruins PR staff for the pizza for lunch.
Whoa, Scott, don't gloss over that. Where was the pizza from? I'm curious.
It's from Flatbread, right downstairs at Warrior.
Okay, I mean, I would have. Oh, is that Warrior? Okay, that's right. I thought it may have been at the Garden. I was going to say that's a little cheap. They should have done halftime at Regina's or something. Okay, carry on.
So we're there pretty late, and then, you hit traffic driving home, and I just want to get something quick for dinner. So I ended up getting Chinese food last night. And as I'm reading my fortune cookies, it sparked an idea. It got me thinking, some of these kind of sound like Jeremy Swayman. And so we want to play a game. Jeremy Swayman quote or fortune cookie message.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. First one. Do not be afraid of competition.
Ooh.
I mean, that could be either. Obviously, that's
Well, I think that's probably the gist of the game.
Shut
I'm
up, Brian.
I'm gonna go. What is it? Don't be afraid of competition.
Do not be afraid of competition.
I'll go fortune cookie on that one. I'll go fortune cookie.
Bridget?
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
That is the fortune cookie message.
Hey.
All right. We're all diamonds.
What do you say? We're all diamonds.
We're all diamonds.
I know this one.
Well, part of me wants to say Swayman because I feel like you're gonna give a couple of each, but I'm gonna stick with my gut and go fortune cookie.
That was Jeremy Swayman.
Yeah, that one was he said that when we were in Montreal, I think.
We're all diamonds. Who is he? Rihanna?
Shine bright.
Okay.
No, that was in Montreal. They lost, and yeah, I forget even what the full answer was. We're diamonds. Pressure makes us stronger, or something like that. Like that, comparing to the diamonds. Anyway, keep going.
Perspective with nature can really help.
Swayman.
I'm gonna say Swayman as well because
Yeah.
I've said fortune cookie twice.
that is Swayman.
That was Swayman yesterday.
Oh, right. Well, his answers are so damn long sometimes, and he takes so long to speak a sentence. I just forget what he says half the time.
Yeah. So the quote was, and I tweeted this out. It said, "For me, positivity has been really beneficial. The spiritual mindset I've had with nature and perspective has really helped me a lot."
Yeah, I think he and Tristan Cassis would be pretty good friends, don't you think? They should link up, maybe get an apartment together or something. Christ's sake.
Tristan says crazier things. I think he's more out there. I've never seen Swayman lying out in the grass, trying to gain energy from the ground. So, I still think Swayman. He's Alaskan. Like, I feel like this is just how Alaskan people talk.
Yeah, and you can't really lie out on the ice. I think that risks frostbite.
Yeah, grounding hits different when it's on ice.
All right. Any more quotes?
An exciting opportunity lies ahead of you.
Oh, that's got fortune cookie all over it, I think.
Yeah, that's a fortune cookie.
I mean, if that was Swayman, that would just be absolutely insane. Like, who's he saying that to? You know what I mean? Kevin Ball DuPont?
He's telling Scott.
Yeah, Scott. Yeah.
Scott advice.
Let's see. All right, here's one. No. Get your mind set. Confidence will lead you on.
That's Swayman. No. Is that Swayman?
That's Swayman, right?
That is a fortune cookie.
Oh my God.
I can't find it. I had a fortune cookie in my bag and I can't find it. It was a good one. I was going to try to sneak it in, but.
All
right.
This is uncanny. This is uncanny.
Two more. What you hear might not be the truth.
No, that's fortune cookie. That has to be a fortune cookie.
That's Swayman.
Come on.
That is Jeremy Swayman.
Are you kidding me? Can you read that again?
What you hear might not be the truth.
I mean, yeah, I guess like
talking about like the trade deadline or like rumors about.
That was from contract negotiations. That was back in the late summer.
Now, if you give me a quote that says I want to reset the goalie market, and I say Jeremy Swayman, and you say fortune cookie, I'm gonna lose my shit because I think I'm 0 for 4 right now. So, I might be 1 for 4.
It's a fortune cookie.
Okay. Last one. We haven't been keeping score, have we? Anyways,
No.
I don't think
losing.
Brian's doing so hot, but
I'm not doing well.
I know Sway, so
okay. Last one. It's all about having the mind of a goldfish.
Swayman.
I
Definitely
mean,
Swayman.
if a fortune cookie said that, I mean, I'm gonna go Swayman. That's got to
Come
be
on, guy.
Swayman.
That was Lena Saldmark. I threw you a curveball.
Ah, damn it.
Okay, fair enough. Well,
Wait a minute.
listen. I think the fact that, and we were talking about this earlier, the fact that we can even play a game like this on a podcast probably is a reason why somebody in the Bruins organization should pull Jeremy aside and say, "Listen, Jeremy, we celebrate who you are as a person. That's you're into nature, you're into meditation or positivity. That's great, but there's a time and a place, and if we lose a game 7-1, you can't be up there like you're some sort of philosopher and just sit there and be a normal person and just I don't know, have a couple of sniffles and we got to do better, like most hockey guys do."
Or flip side, maybe you should just lean all the way in and like start breaking out fortune cookies every press conference.
Maybe, but I do think though, guys, like going forward, somebody needs to just have a conversation with him and say, "Jeremy, you for one reason or the other, you've been far too polarizing of a player this past season. It's not good for you. It's not good for the team. You have to rein it in somehow, some way. It might not all be you. You're in a media market that can have a magnifying glass at times, and Scott said earlier, if you're a Vezina winner and you're quirky, no one's saying anything. So your play will speak more than your actions, but you can't be that polarizing. You just can't be. And if you are, chances are you're probably contributing to it in one way, shape, or form. And he needs to kind of rein it back a little bit.
But yeah, I mean, there's certainly some media training that should happen, but I really do come back to like ultimately it's just how you play. Because if you're winning and you're playing well, none of the rest of it matters. Like, sure, there's still going to be your Felgren Mazes who find stuff to complain about, but 98% of the fan base is not going to care what you're saying if you're playing great.
Yeah.
It's when you struggle that the pylon gets going, and then at that point, it also doesn't really matter what you say, because if you say something that everyone loves, and then the next game you give up 5 goals, guess what? No one cares what you said 2 nights ago. So it really does just all come back to the play. Like you can be as weird as you want if you're one of the 3 or 4 best goalies in the NHL. If you struggle all season, then like people are gonna latch onto everything and rip every little thing you say and criticize how you act and what you're like as a person, and it all comes into play because you're just an easy target.
Yeah. No, and I do feel bad because I do think it's just he's from Alaska. He's got a different perspective than a lot of people. And I do feel a little bit bad for asking the question and seeing how much of a reaction it got. But talk radio is really happy that I asked it, but I feel a little bit guilty and a little bit bad.
No,
I do think he means well.
But you shouldn't, because like you asked a legit question, and he gave a long answer and went on, and like that's where he eventually took it to. Like I think I joked before the podcast. It's not like you asked him like, "Hey, Jeremy, like how does spirituality and nature affect your approach?" Like you didn't bring that into it.
You know what? Being from Alaska and being into nature and positivity has nothing to do with going on a podcast a month and a half before the season begins and discussing an ongoing negotiation that's going to get taken by all media waves and discussed, because there's no doubt in my mind that the last thing Jeremy Swayman wanted to do was go onto a podcast and negatively affect his teammates. I don't think that's what his goal was. In fact, I don't even think he thought that far into it, right? But the fact of the matter is there are certain things you can or can't do that will put you into a bad situation or make you vulnerable and the people around you vulnerable. And so for me, it's less about a quote after a game, because you're right. play speaks for everything. And if he's playing well, and what matters most is what his teammates think about him. And so if he's playing well, his teammates also will just, say, oh, that's just Sway being, Sway, but he's playing well. But it's the little things like you don't go on and discuss contract negotiations publicly because it does affect the media now focusing on the Bruins, not just in Boston, but in North America. The Bruins were the biggest hockey story, and there was a lot of negativity surrounding management to the point where management had to go out onto a podium and they started to show that they were verbally going at it with spit and chiclets. Like that's not professional, and none of that happens if Swayman isn't going publicly about his contract stuff. So little things like that, I'm sure he should hopefully learn from. And when you're in a city like Boston, in a big market, your actions and your words affect more than just yourself. It affects your teammates. And to me, that's the biggest takeaway that Swayman should have, which is you can be about yourself behind the scenes when you're having contract negotiations with your agent and in the team. But when the second you go public about things, you're no longer affecting just yourself, and you have to be more selfless in those situations. And I'm hoping that he's learned from that, and he probably has. But that's more what I'm talking about, where media training, to Scott's point, hopefully he matures going forward because he has to, especially in this market. No, we're not Toronto. We're not Montreal. We're not even Vancouver. But domestically, Boston is as tough as a hockey market as there is in the United States, I would say, when it comes to media coverage. Not that people are in the media are necessarily out to get the Bruins, but people care very much about the Bruins in this town. And you have to realize that it's not all about you, especially when you go public with things. So that's where I think Swayman went wrong last year, more so than anything.
Can I give one more? And I know we all know the answer to this one. It's gonna give itself away. But this was my favorite one. Pressure is what you put in tires, dupes.
Well, that last part I'm gonna say is unless it's a very in the know Chinese restaurant that loves Bruins beat writers.
Dupes is Kevin Ball DuPont from the Boston Globe.
Yeah.
Pressure is what you put in tires, dupes. That one perked my ear up as soon as I heard it. I was like, oh no, I gotta grab, because then we played that one on Sunday Skate when that first came out. But that was a good one. I was like, Scott, pressure is what we put in tires. That's it. Yeah, that was a good one. But anyway, I do have one final thought about Swayman that was about a different comment. It was not about nature. It was about how he felt after 58 games and how mentally and physically he thought he handled the workload. And he said basically that he had no issue with the workload. That wasn't, part of the problem. So basically he said he felt great. And he went into detail about, basically training staff did a great job in terms of helping him with his recovery, and that he thought that, he handled that physically without an issue.
Yeah, which is encouraging. Like, I will say, like, he clearly, I think, worked to the finish line. I don't think he gave up or they didn't shut him down or anything like that. But I mean, there were some really inconsistent stretches in the middle. And so like that's where I wonder where, at this point now, I feel like he's focused on, hey, I still felt good at the end. But even if it was more mental than physical, like something caused the inconsistent. Like we know, okay, the start of the season, that was probably the result of missing camp and everything that went on around the holdout and the contract negotiations and all that. But then there was a stretch where he, like December, January, where it looked like he was starting to find his game. And then that was followed up by inconsistency. And, not that he finished like great, but like he picked it up a little down the stretch. I do still wonder, like, because that inconsistency started before the trade deadline. So it wasn't just a matter of, oh, everyone got traded away and then he just had a whole new team in front of him. Like it started before that. So I do wonder, like, was that the mental grind of the season? Was there something physical then? Like, because yeah, the next step obviously is like, okay, you might feel great and you might feel like physically you made it through, but now the next step is being consistent all the ways through because that didn't happen this season. So, um, I don't know, like that he wasn't really asked about that and didn't get into it much, but like those are almost two different things, right? Like being able to physically hold up 58 games is one thing and feeling like your body can do it, but being able to be consistent and deliver for 5 months in a row, like that's a different challenge.
I'll read the quote just so that people have it. He said, I'm so happy with the way my body felt and my mind felt. Just being hungry every game, expecting to play and getting the nod and wanting to give my team a chance to win every single night. It's a huge testament to the trainers here and the work that we put in to allow my body to attain that physical workload.
Well, I'm glad he wanted to give his team a chance to win every night, but did he? I don't think his numbers indicate that he did, but again, obviously there was far more problems on this team than just the goaltending, but he was one of them. But ultimately, I think
And it ended up being 70. He got just over 70% of starts. So, it's a pretty good chunk of games right there.
yeah, and again, he's coming from Hockey East, right? And then in the NHL, he has been platooning. So the fact that he was able to at least get this experience, regardless of how he played, it was necessary, right? He has the experience mentally, physically of going through it. That's a positive. He says that he improved his puck handling. He thinks behind the net, his communication with his defense partners behind the net. Those aren't things that show up in your goals against average and save percentage. So those things.
Which, by the way, I don't know if I agree with that. He made
also
a
my
lot
question.
of puck handling mistakes this season.
Whoa, Scott, please stay being with your present self, okay? There's no need to get all upset right now. Just stay within your present self here.
That was also my question, and halfway through his answer, I got hit by one of the reporters who was trying to run to Pastrnak, and he stopped the interview and started laughing, and he was like, I'm sorry. I was like, no, you're not on you. But yes, that was another answer to one of my questions.
By the way, can you guys hear any banging going on in my background? And listeners,
No.
I apologize if you do. No, okay.
No.
Sounds like someone's tearing down a house outside where I am. Jesus. All
Yeah,
right.
you have a different background today. Where are you?
I know. I'm in a different setting today, as you can tell by the the plain black. I don't even know what that's called. But yeah, I'm
Instead
at
of
an
a green screen, it's
yeah,
just a black screen.
it's just a black screen. But okay. Are we done with Swayman? Because there was some
Yeah,
Zadorov
we
comments.
can
I know we're
do-
running low on time here, but I wanted to talk about Nikita Zadorov, if you guys don't mind, and some of the
Yeah.
comments he made about management, in his words, telling the players that they're going to make some big additions, and he listed all these reasons as to why free agents would want to come to Boston, and he listed that it's an original 6 team, great hockey city, and that they have one of the best forwards in the world. They have
I think he called Morgan Geekie the breakout player of the year.
breakout player of the year. He mentioned
Specifically named Geekie, but it seemed like that's who he was talking
that.
about.
Well, I mean, unless he was talking about Kepke, but I don't think so, guys. But no, yeah, he was definitely referring to Geekie, and he mentioned, 2 of their best defensemen coming back, and Lindholm and McAvoy, and just some other things. But
And he said goaltending. He said goaltending.
he said goaltending, and somebody followed up and asked about if he heard from management, and he was like, well, of course. He's like, do you think they're gonna waste Pasternak's prime years and McAvoy's, and I only have so much time left, and Elias Lindholm and others? So, for anybody who's clamoring for the Bruins to intentionally suck next year or go into a rebuild, you can want that all you want. This ownership group, they're not like, if the Bruins are a bottom 5 team next year, it's gonna be because they sucked despite going out and buying some free agents and trying to get better and be a competitive playoff team. It's not going to be because it's an intentional tanking.
Yeah, for sure. And like we already kind of had an idea about this because Charlie Jacobs, in his interview at the Globe this week, made a point to call it a retool and said it wasn't a rebuild. So that's kind of been the consistent message all along. Yeah, so I would love to know, like, was that actually a team meeting or something that took place yesterday where Don Sweeney like addressed the team and said, "Yeah, we're gonna get better, guys. Like, we're gonna add," or was this more of like a one-off? Like, did Zadorov just bring that up in his meeting with Sweeney and get some assurance? And I don't know, but yeah, it clearly came across as like management told me today that like they're gonna add.
Yeah.
Which again isn't super surprised. Like the Bruins spend to the cap every year, and they have $27 million in cap space. Like I think we would expect them to use it, right? Like they're not going to be one of these teams that goes into the season with $12 million in cap space. So yeah, we'll see. You know what? The only thing that worries me about trying to go this way, where you're trying to get back quickly next year, is like, do you try to take shortcuts, or do you go spend on a player just because you think you have to? I've said like I would go after Mitch Marner. He's the top guy in the market. Maybe that's your only external addition, but so what? Like that's one where I'm like, you're not gonna miss on Mitch Marner. Like maybe he will ultimately prove to not be like the perfect guy to build around along with Pastrnak and McAvoy, but you know what you're gonna get from Mitch Marner. Like you're gonna if you put you two on his line, he's gonna have 85 points. If you put good players on his line, he's gonna have 100. So
you're not calling us good players, Scott? What the hell's that all about? Come on now.
Sorry, guys. I got out of line.
We got through most of this.
That was a cheap shot. That was a low.
Sheesh, my God.
Yeah.
My God, good thing I'm with my present self right now, or I'll be pissed. Scott, well, sorry, you can finish your thought.
No, I think I was pretty much done. But what I was gonna say is like I do worry. Like, say you miss out on Marner, do you then spend big on? Do you maybe overspend on other guys just because you feel like you have to? Because you've already laid out this expectation that you're adding and you're trying to turn it around in 1 year. So that would worry me a little bit because sometimes there just isn't a shortcut and you have to take a little bit of a longer term approach, but it seems like they're going to try to do this quickly.
Yeah. And on breakup day, that these guys are also having exit interviews. So I'm guessing he had probably just come from speaking with management in some degree because he was kind of towards the end of the day. So I'm guessing he had maybe spoken already because he referenced it, Zadorov, and he said, we have a great president, great general manager. They're willing to do anything to win. And that was a clear message today. It's going to be an exciting summer.
Yeah. I mean, Scott, when you mentioned that it might, you wonder if he had like a team meeting with everybody to say he was going to spend big. That scene from Austin Powers popped into my mind where he's like, everybody out, not you, and I just pictured Sweeney being like, all right, we're gonna have a very competitive team next year. Not you, Koepke, not you, Beecher, not you, Loco, just everybody else. But yeah, I think it may have been something.
Yeah, he's like, we're gonna bring in 9 forwards, and all of a sudden, like the bottom 6 guys are like, wait, hold on, wait, am I here?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure it may have been something from the exit meetings or a message that was sent, obviously, to key players they think are going to be here for the future.
Right, like it might have even been like a leadership group meeting. Like I mentioned that obviously there's Pastrnak, McAvoy, clearly Hampus Lindholm's in there, and then seems like Zadorov, Elias Lindholm. Like maybe it's just like those 4 or 5 guys or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
I
again,
want them to include Morgan Geekie in it. I think Morgan Geekie's actually, he's one of the more well-spoken guys and intelligent guy. He seems to have started to really take on at least some secondary leadership qualities and responsibilities since the trade deadline. So, I mean,
is this
Yeah,
because he listens to everything and reads everything?
that was interesting the last day of the
Wasn't that?
season. Yeah, that was because one of our colleagues, Gail, said, you said at the beginning of the year that you heard the outside noise, and he says he goes out of his way to read stuff and goes like not just Twitter, like people's articles. Like
he's
I
always
don't know, this guy's
watching. He's
been talking
always
shit.
watching. Got to be careful.
Mhm. Yeah, he said he uses it as motivation. I don't know. He had a great season. Maybe it worked. I don't know, but then she said, "Well, is it nice that you now have fans and you don't hear a lot of negative stuff?" And he took that in like a negative way. He was like, yeah, they're bandwagoners or something. I was like, I don't know if that's what she
Yeah.
meant. Like, but I think he meant like the people who are criticizing him all of a sudden, oh, now they're his fans. Like, basically,
Oh,
see, you should have never said anything bad about me in the first place.
it's the classic players. This is their livelihood, and they're human beings. And the reality is, when it's a spectator sport, the spectators are going to value you based on your production and performance. And players, right or wrong, will sit there and say, "Hey, I'm going to have shitty times and good stretches." And the human element is, you didn't come to my defense when I was struggling, and don't come to my praise when I'm playing well. But again, what are fans are fans. Like this is a spectator sport for them, and they're gonna look at production. It's again, it's the nature of professional sports where you have the people that are in it and then the people that watch it. And you
He
can't fault either
certainly was.
side.
It felt like to me, he certainly was more talking about media members and like written work in local.
I think it's both because we've seen him
Yeah.
respond to fans on Twitter too. So it's probably both.
Yeah. Hey,
Uh
if you need that bulletin board material, then
yeah.
go ahead if it motivates you.
Scott, to your point about being concerned if the Bruins try to overcorrect in terms of paying a player that they shouldn't, and to try to do quick fixes. One of the things that I'm curious is, they'll have more information come July than they have right now. For example, do they fall to 7th in the draft, and they draft a guy who might be a second line player, or maybe a first line player, but in 2 or 3 years? Or do they pick first or second overall and get Michael Misa, and maybe not this year, but certainly next year they can say, well, we'll have a top 2 probably center that's on an entry level deal, and we don't have to pay up the ass for center help right now, because we have him on the cusp at some point, and we can pay Marner on the wing, and we won't overpay for Matt Duchene or Sam Bennett, because we know we'll have Misa eventually. So they'll have that information to work with in July.
Yeah, and that's a good point because right, like if you have the 7th pick and whoever they get, like obviously that player's not maybe going to make as immediate of an impact as Misa might. If they think they should be back next year, like now, I wonder, like, does that open up the possibility of, you mentioned Duchene or John Tavares, like these guys that I don't really think they should be in on, even though they would be an upgrade at the center position over what they have now. But I'm like, because to me it doesn't fit their timeline, because I don't think their timeline is trying to win next year. But if they think it is, or if that's the mandate from ownership, well, then, like, shouldn't those guys be in play? Like, if you think you're trying to win next year and you need to upgrade center, like, shouldn't you be in on those guys? Again, like that's the kind of thing that feels like it's a mistake to me. That feels like trying to take a shortcut when you should have some patience.
Mm-hmm. Unless it's a situation where they do end up getting lucky enough to take a Misa, and so maybe now they say that Casey Middlestad is expendable, or somebody else, and that opens up room to bring in some. It's just, and I know you're talking about if they finish 7th or whatever. You're not wrong to be concerned about trying to have short-term fixes that end up becoming long-term problems.
Yeah, I guess like
we'll
I
just
just
see what
mean
happens.
hey, if you're gonna spend big money and sign a guy in his late 20s to a long-term deal, whether that's Marner or Nick Ehlers, like fine. That guy's in his prime, and you're even if this takes a couple years, like you still have them in the picture and going moving forward. But it's like signing the guy in his mid-30s. That to me just doesn't. It's not something I would be doing. But
Yeah.
if they feel like they're going to be back next year, or they're supposed to be back next year,
Mhm.
I wonder if they go down that road.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point to bring up. We'll have
And
to watch.
Sweeney did allude to wanting to bring in outside veterans. Maybe that's, if
Yeah.
you go for a
Which
fourth
to me
liner
should
instead of
be, yeah, like to me, like that should be like the cheaper guys, though. Like that should be a Kevin Shattenkirk or James Van Riemsdyk, not spending $8 million on Duchesne or 9 or 10 on Tavares.
Yeah. And I wouldn't consider even, I know Duchesne is a veteran, but I feel like he doesn't necessarily fit the bill of
That
like,
doesn't quite give off those vibes.
no, he
He's a
doesn't.
great
Like
leader.
Tavares, yes, but I don't know about Duchesne.
Well, and here's the other thing as well is the Bruins could identify players that they want and are willing to pay for in the summer, but the players still have to want to come to Boston. Even if the money is better in Boston, maybe there's reasons they don't want to be in Boston. So
Well,
that's
then
the
just
problem with
send
this.
them the video that Zadorov just answered.
Well, that or just the fact that they have Murat Husnudinov on the team, and anybody would want to play with the next Connor McDavid. So I just don't understand what
Ugh.
the downside is. No,
That
I'm
was my first
joking. For
time
anybody
talking
who
to
doesn't
him.
realize, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm
That was
joking.
that was
I'm just
yes,
joking.
we know. I think we know. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know Koozie Gang. But that was my first time talking to him, and Scott made it sound like he knew a little bit more English than I think he did. Or maybe he was just nervous because it's probably his first media scrum of that extent. But I did have to ask my question to him a few times. Um, but I asked him, I said, would you be happy? And obviously you have to ask questions with words that are, a second language person can understand. And I said, would you be happy if you got extended by the Bruins? And I'm not sure he knew what the word extended was, but so I asked it again, and then he said, yes, best franchise or something like that. That was his answer. So Brian,
Perfect.
he's gonna stick around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the first time he's tried to, or that he has done a media scrum with a bunch of reporters around. So yeah, I kind of knew like no one's really gonna get much out of that. Yeah, I do
We
think like
needed
when I talked to him
Zadorov to
one-on-one,
translate.
obviously he was. Sorry, what was that?
I said we needed Zadorov there to translate, but he had left already.
Yeah, like when I talked to him one-on-one, you're able to get more in that setting, and obviously like it just takes time. Like you have to be patient with him. He's going to be patient with you. Like, yeah, because there are questions that he doesn't pick up the first time. But he did say then that, like, not yesterday, like when I talked to him, that he is going to keep working on his English this summer. Like he came to North America last April, knowing virtually no English. Learned some. Kirill Kaprizov helped him when he got to Minnesota. Obviously, another fellow Russian. But yeah, he did say he's gonna like make a point to learn more this summer.
He also said he was going to spend the summer in Moscow. So he will not be here over the summer. He'll be training there.
Guys, one last thing from me before we sign off, and you guys obviously have time for any closing statements of your own, but I meant to say this off the top, and I haven't gotten around to it, but one of my takeaways from Media Day in listening to Pastrnak and McAvoy in particular, and Lindholm and and just some other guys, this off season, missing the playoffs, it helps them in my opinion, for a few different reasons. Number one, it allows them the opportunity to potentially draft first or second overall, certainly in the top 7, as we've discussed. So that's a benefit long term. But I also think that in Boston, for a lot of these players that have been around, I think there's probably a subconscious feeling of we just expect to get to the playoffs. It's what we do. And I think that they realized the hard way this year that it's not how it works. You have to you can't take anything for granted. And I think that they probably got a little bit of humble pie, I think, as an organization and as individuals and certainly as a team this year. You see some of your best friends traded away. You realize that it's a performance-based business, and that's not a bad realization for these star players that they do have to go through once in their career, because this is the first time McAvoy has missed the playoffs, and it's the first time Pastrnak has missed the playoffs since he first broke into the league and had an inconsistent role as an 18 and 19-year-old. But furthermore, I think that it allows these players, you listen to McAvoy talk about Four Nations, you listen to other players talk about these players having as much time as they need to get right for next season. They're going to come back motivated. The roster will be more competitive than what we've seen in the last couple of months, obviously, but these players are going to come back motivated, healthy, with a fresh mindset, and with probably a chip on their shoulder. And when you think about how you have 16 teams playing, it's funny because every year we're watching playoff hockey and we don't think about it this way, but the Stanley Cup champion for this year, they're playing the toughest hockey of the season for the next 2 months from now. And that's the benefit to non-playoff teams not making the playoffs, is that they can rest their minds and bodies. And obviously, a lot of non-playoff teams' rosters aren't that good. But if we're trying to find some positives in the Bruins missing the playoffs this year, there's a long-term positive of getting a top 7 draft pick. And then there's the intangible positives of players being motivated and just having some different perspectives going forward, wanting to prove people wrong, wanting to get back to where they want to be. And again, the body and mind getting the rest and recovery that it needs. These are positives, in my opinion, where Boston should be a focused and driven team come next fall. And I think it starts in the summer. I think these players are going to have a purposeful summer. And Bridget, I saw your comments in the chat where last season training camp was a known issue now, and there was a lack of focus, and I think I think everybody has accountability for that. I think the coaching staff, I think management, and the players, everybody should be held accountable for that. But I think that if we're trying to find positives about the Bruins missing the playoffs this year, I do think there are some that are worth mentioning.
Yeah, they learned that lesson. That's certainly one that they and they know the consequences, right? The consequence isn't just missing the playoffs; it's watching all of your friends get moved other places.
Yeah,
obviously a much more personal and emotionally distressing outcome.
Yeah, and I know they've said Joe Sack is a candidate. Like, we don't expect him to be the next head coach, so there's going to be a new head coach. Like, they're going to have something to prove in camp. So, like, that alone creates, a renewed focus and energy, because it's going to be a fresh start for everyone. So, yeah, that can be a good thing. Guys, yeah, you mentioned playoffs. Like, they start this weekend. Obviously, we don't have time to preview series or anything like that, nor would we really want to, because we're a Bruins podcast. But do you guys have predictions? Do you have a cup pick?
I do.
First round series or anything?
I do, and I did fill out my bracket, and I'll just give you my quick results in 15 seconds. I have Toronto over Ottawa in 7, Florida over Tampa in 6, Washington over the Canadiens in 7, and I have the Hurricanes over the Devils in 5. I don't like New Jersey. They are limping into the playoffs. They're battered with Jack Hughes out for the season. Hamilton might be coming back, but he's going to be rusty. And then out west, I have St. Louis over the Jets as an upset, because I know the Jets are first in the NHL, but I don't trust them in the playoffs. And St. Louis has been one of the best teams in the second half, and they're rolling. Then I have Colorado over Dallas. The Heiskanen injury hurts Dallas. I have Vegas over Minnesota. They just got too much power. And then the Ekholm injury for Edmonton and their goaltending. I have the Kings over the Oilers. That's an upset as well, probably in most minds, but I think the Kings are good. And like I said, those two, the Ekholm injury is tough and their goaltending sucks. And then I got the Blues, the Avs over the Blues, Vegas over the Kings. I got the Panthers over the Leafs, Capitals over the Hurricanes, Panthers over Capitals, Avs over Vegas, and then I have the Avs beating Florida in the finals. I just think that it's a lot of hockey for Florida to go to the finals 3 years in a row, and they might lose the war of attrition and not get to the finals, but they're just so talented, so deep, and so gritty. I just really have a hard time seeing somebody in the East beat them 4 out of 7. And out West, I think the Avs have the star power and the intangibles it takes to beat at that stage, very tired Florida team. So there's a couple of different Stanley Cup final combinations I could see happening. I think it's a very, very even playoff field for the most part this year, but I have Avs over Florida.
I also thought it was between the Avs and Vegas for me. Obviously, both coming out of the West. But I, as a UMass grad, am a Cale Makar fan, so I let that override any judgment I may have had. And Scott's a BU guy, so maybe he said, okay, Eichel's going to beat Makar because I'm from BU. But no, I agree with you. I actually was picking the Avs. I'll be rooting for the Avs because of Cale Makar, and Charlie Coyle ended up there. So, I mean, good for Charlie if he's able to go in a cup there.
I'm sticking with my post-trade deadline prediction because I liked the deadline both of these teams had, adding more around the edges versus complete overhauls. And my cup pick is going to be Tampa over Winnipeg, 2 teams that Brian has losing the first round. So
wow. Well, I think I obviously see the allure for both teams. I think I'm not sold on Tampa's. I'm not sold on their depth on the blue line necessarily, and even up front. Like I think they're certainly a deep team, but I just when you're matched up against Florida in the first round. Now Florida, they have some players coming back that, as we saw with the Bruins a couple of years ago, getting star players back for the playoffs doesn't necessarily translate to success because there's rust and they're not fully healthy. So if Florida goes down in the first round, I could see that happening for those reasons. And then Winnipeg, I just don't trust them. But
I also I think like one of the most underrated storylines this whole season is that Tampa got elite Andrei Vasilevsky back after a down season. And like, just no one's talked about it at all. It's like, yeah, okay. Oh, wow. He's one of the 2 best goalies in the world again. Cool. Like, no one seems to care. And I'm like, I don't know. That guy can easily just go on another cup run.
My other reason besides not trusting Winnipeg against St. Louis is that I don't think they'll be with Nikolai Ehlers, certainly for the first part of that round.
He got banged up late.
So that's problematic for them. Significantly hurts them. All right, Bridget has to go. Thank you all very much for listening. We appreciate it as always.
We've gotten some mailbag questions, so I think we should do one next week. Maybe even early in the week. I know we didn't necessarily plan this out. I was too busy going through fortune cookies. But even if it's like a mini one, because we'll have playoff games to react to and stuff. But people should send us questions.
Yeah, and there actually was plenty of stuff from Breakup Day that I feel like we didn't get to, so we have time to do that.
Skatepod at weei.com, tweet us at the skatepod, or leave a comment on YouTube. So we might even do that Monday or Tuesday if we get enough in.
Alrighty. Like I said, thank you all very much for listening. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.